The championship arrives in Abu Dhabi with a strange tension in the air, the kind that makes even the calmest engineers walk a little faster in the paddock. McLaren's missed opportunity in Qatar tightened the title fight, Verstappen closed the gap, Piastri stayed alive, and the season set itself up for a final chapter that feels more like the edge of a knife than a sporting finale. But beneath the championship storyline, something else has been brewing. Quiet at first, subtle enough to escape most headlines, until it wasn't. A single moment on track, insignificant to the casual viewer, triggered conversations behind closed doors, urgent phone calls, and one of the most uncomfortable atmospheres of the entire year. The paddock knows when something is wrong, and this time, the silence spoke louder than the noise. Whispers about responsibility, accusations said too quickly, and the kind of digital firestorm that forces teams and the FIA to react. We won't reveal the core of the situation yet, not here, not now. All you need to know is this: what happened in Qatar didn't stay in Qatar. It followed the grid to Abu Dhabi like a shadow. And today, we're going to unfold exactly what that shadow is made of. Before we open that door, hit subscribe and like. It helps this channel keep digging into the stories that most outlets ignore, the ones hidden between the lines. Let's set the technical stage. In Qatar, McLaren had the pace to fight for the win, but when the safety car appeared for Hülkenberg's retirement, the team kept both Norris and Piastri out. Verstappen stopped, gained track position, and never looked back. Because every driver was required to make 2 pit stops, the timing of the safety car became decisive and McLaren fell on the wrong side of strategy. That's why the title goes to Abu Dhabi with Norris ahead, Max close behind, and Piastri lurking. But while engineers debated tire choices and timing, another story exploded: Kimi Antonelli's late race spin while fighting Carlos Sainz for P3. A normal racing moment turned into a narrative of intentionality after comments on the Red Bull radio and public accusations. That's where we dive next: the moment, the accusation, and the firestorm that followed. If you're enjoying the analysis so far, subscribe and drop a like. The next segment digs into details you won't hear in mainstream coverage. Every rivalry in Formula One carries a price, but the Verstappen-Norris dynamic is especially volatile because both drivers are still evolving. Verstappen believes that dominance is not only earned but defended with aggression. Norris believes he finally has a car worthy of his talent, and he refuses to be treated as a side character in Max's script. This is a collision course sharpened by personality, expectation, and the ticking clock of a generation shift. Fans love to imagine friendships surviving championship pressure, but Formula One tends to expose the truth: when the stakes rise, even the calmest personalities fracture. If Norris truly wants the title, he must stop racing with respect and start racing to win, even if it breaks the relationship he's protected for years. And Verstappen? He has never been more cornered. For the first time since 2021, someone is threatening to push him off the throne by pure pace, not strategy or luck. This is why the tension between them feels different from any other rivalry on the grid. They're not enemies, yet. But they're no longer friends either. They're two meteors heading toward the same piece of sky, and only one can keep the orbit. The real question is whether this rivalry becomes legendary or destructive enough to change both of their careers forever. Before we continue, if you appreciate clear explanations and real facts instead of manufactured controversy, subscribe now. Leave a like, it pushes the algorithm to show this video to more F1 fans who want real journalism, not noise. After the spin and the overtake, the spark appeared. Lambiase said over the radio that Antonelli let Lando through. Moments later, Helmut Marko repeated the accusation to the press, saying the Italian clearly signaled for Norris to pass. Those two statements detonated a massive online reaction. More than 1,100 hostile messages flooded Antonelli's accounts, enough for the Mercedes team to step in, document everything, and prepare a report for the FIA under the United Against Online Abuse initiative. Red Bull realized the fire they'd lit. Their official statement acknowledged that Marko's comments were incorrect and regretted the abuse Antonelli suffered. Marko retracted his words after reviewing the footage. Toto Wolff, furious, called the accusation nonsense and clarified that once Lambiase and he spoke directly, the misunderstanding was settled. It was simply a mistake by a young driver pushing hard on worn hard tires. But the damage had been done. Antonelli changed his profile photo to a black circle, a quiet, symbolic message of being overwhelmed. This wasn't a racing controversy. It became a psychological one. A social one. A political one. Let's hear Antonelli's own version. When Antonelli finally spoke, his words cut through the noise with the clarity that the situation desperately needed. No excuses, no dramatics, just the honest breakdown of a young driver pushing beyond the limit. He explained the oversteer snap, the dirty air, the miscalculated entry speed, the loss of rear grip, and how a simple error cascaded into losing momentum at the exact worst moment. But what happened after the mistake weighed far more than the mistake itself. The psychological impact was immediate: the flood of messages, the accusations replayed endlessly online, the pressure of being dissected by millions. Mercedes moved fast, shielding him, filtering messages, holding internal meetings, and coordinating with the FIA through the United Against Online Abuse initiative. The paddock watched all of this unfold with a mix of discomfort and urgency. Drivers privately reached out. Engineers discussed it in the garages. Team principals in rival outfits criticized the tone of the accusations. Everyone could see what was happening. A rookie, already living inside the furnace of expectation, was now being burned by a narrative he didn't create. Antonelli changing his profile picture to a black circle wasn't a gesture for attention, it was the quiet signal of someone overwhelmed. Someone who, in a sport built on millimeters and milliseconds, suddenly had to deal with an avalanche of judgment measured in thousands of comments per minute. And this is where the conversation evolves. Because Qatar wasn't just a racing incident, it became a case study of how words from influential figures can ignite an entire ecosystem. If you want full updates on the FIA's response, the final race in Abu Dhabi, and Antonelli's situation, subscribe and like right now. This kind of work only continues because you support it. Now that the adrenaline has cooled and the statements have been corrected, the truth stands in its raw form. A racing error spiraled into a storm because people with massive platforms let emotion speak before reason. And once that narrative escaped into the wild, it became something no one could control. The FIA stepping in wasn't just protocol, it was necessity. Mercedes documenting and reporting the abuse wasn't overreaction, it was evidence of how toxic the digital environment has become for young drivers. Red Bull retracting and apologizing wasn't a gesture of kindness, it was damage control after realizing how far the situation had escalated. And amidst all of this, the championship fight tightens. Norris, Verstappen and Piastri head into the final race separated by the kind of margins that keep strategists awake at night. Yet the conversation surrounding Abu Dhabi now carries an additional layer. How does a rookie walk into the most high-pressure weekend of his life while carrying the weight of a global backlash? F1 has always been political, always intense, always brutal. But this episode exposed a new fragility, the mental and emotional vulnerability of athletes who live under the magnifying glass of millions. So we leave Abu Dhabi with two parallel narratives. One written in lap times. And another written in the emotional cost of a sport that refuses to slow down. Final call. If you want real, unfiltered storytelling, the truth behind the paddock walls, subscribe, like, and share. Because this story doesn't end in Abu Dhabi. It only reveals what the next season will inherit.